Rotobaga, a very underrated plant that shoots in 4 directions diagonally, and sometimes gets overshadowed by the star fruit as it can shoot in 5 directions and is a little bit more OG. But personally, I side with Rotobaga, so I wanted to see if it could solo the entire game by itself at max level. But before we begin, let me tell you all the rules. Only Rotobaga, no power-ups or Zen Garden, skip all levels that force the use of another plant, pre-placed plants are fine, and lastly, coins earned throughout the challenge can be used to buy plant food, but no replaying levels to farm coins. Oh, and about 89% of people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later, okay?
Let's begin the Rotobaga's path of destruction.
For ancient Egypt and pirate seas, Rotobaga completely sweeps through both of them, so while we super speed through them, let me tell y'all the stats of the max level Rotobaga. Its sun cost goes from 150 to 100, its recharge goes from 5 seconds to 3 seconds, its health goes from 300 to 900, its damage goes from 10 to 40, its projectile velocity has a multiplier of 1.6, and a pretty interesting upgrade is that its plant food power, instead of having a damage increase, it actually has a projectile count increase, and it goes from 15 to 45. So basically, instead of shooting 15 shots with this plant food power, it shoots 45. And lastly, there's the mastery damage boost and also the 20% chance to plant food on placement. And with that, all of ancient Egypt and pirate seas had been beaten using just the max level Rotobaga. Up next, Wild West itself doesn't have too threatening of a start, so days 1, 2, 3, and 5 were all very easily beaten. Day 6 is the first prep your defenses level, so of course we prep defenses. Day 7, we go back to normal with 2 flags and just using these 3 Rotobagas in the front because it allows them to hit all 5 lanes. Even 2 could do the job, but 3 is just much more efficient. Day 10, however, we do have to change the strategy a little bit because it's the introduction of the chickens. And I wasn't prepared for them at all at first because I just didn't have enough sun, so chickens in the top lane actually made it all the way to the end, taking a lawnmower. And then a couple seconds later, I ran into the same debacle of not having enough sun, so I thought I was going to lose in the very top lane, but I collected a sun and got a Rotobaga down last second and it plant fooded, taking the chickens out. But while that was happening, and you might have missed it, one of the Rotobagas in the front got eaten, so the lawnmower in that lane got taken by chickens, and then I had to constantly plant food the one in the top lane so it wouldn't get eaten itself. And then while defending the top 2 lanes, again I didn't have enough sun, so chickens in the very bottom lane took a lawnmower as well. And since I was running into these problems of not having a Rotobaga in certain lanes, I decided it'd be smart to place one on the minecart so I could move it around into a lane it needed to be in. But by this time, we'd beaten all the chickens and all that was left were the zombies in the top lane, and after defeating them pretty easily, day 10 had been beaten. Day 11 thankfully is much easier with 1 flag and a 500 sun limit, but that's more than enough as we're able to beat the level using 300 sun. Day 13 isn't anything special either. It has 2 flags and no special challenges, so I start off with the 3 Rotobaga in the front, but since the mechanical bulls were introduced, I added a couple more Rotobaga just to deal with them faster. In the end, taking down day 13. Day 14 though is the return of the chickens, and this time I was much smarter as I stalled the first zombie pretty heavily until I felt like I had enough sun. And in doing this, I was able to get down 5 Rotobaga before the first chicken wrangler was even sent in. And the stalling strategy is pretty effective with Rotobaga because if you remember, its recharge is only 3 seconds, so that's not a problem. The main problem is the sun cost. And sometimes the chickens would make it all the way to the Rotobaga, slowly eating away at them, but they weren't doing too much damage, and if they did, I would just plant food to replenish its health. And in doing this, day 14 had been beat. Days 15, 16, and 17 were all taken down very easily. Day 18, we once again prep defenses. Day 19 has 2 flags, and the special challenges are a 2000 sun limit and also that we can't lose more than 2 plants. And with literally 0 threatening zombies in this level, we won without losing a single Rotobaga. Day 21 has the special challenge of protecting flowers from being trampled on, and this one, though the challenge is scary, it doesn't have any chicken wranglers, which makes our task much simpler and pretty easily accomplished. Day 23, however, is the exact opposite as it has the trample flower challenge, but this time time, we can't lose more than 2 plants, and there's also chickens in this level. And as you can see on the screen right now, I employed the same strategy of stalling the first zombie until I felt like I had enough sun. And once again, in doing this, we're able to get down 5 Rotobaga before the first chicken wrangler was even sent in. And thankfully, whenever the chicken wranglers are sent in, it's not too crazy of an amount, so the first column of Rotobaga are able to handle them pretty easily, and this allows us to add more Rotobaga behind them just for extra protection in the future. And with the help of some plant food, we're able to beat day 23 on our first attempt. And now we're on the last level that we play of the Wild West, day 24. And in this level, we have the special task of defending these 3 walnuts on these 3 minecarts. So of course, mainly against chickens, and this time I didn't do any stalling, and I actually ended up losing a lawnmower in the very bottom lane to start off. But as soon as I got enough sun, I planted a Rotobaga in that bottom lane to protect it against the chickens. And then I thought the Rotobaga in the very top lane was about to get eaten, so I plant fooded it just in case, because even though the lawnmower would protect that lane, losing a Rotobaga is pretty detrimental as it cost 100 sun. And once I got the full column of Rotobaga down, I knew that the rest of the level would be pretty easy. I would just have to make sure that there weren't any chickens sneakily eating away at the walnuts. And I saw that the front walnut was actually getting damaged, so I ended up plant fooding it just in case. But with the rest of the level going pretty smoothly, we beat day 24, and that was all of Wild West beaten using just a max level Rotobaga. Next up, Frostbite Caves day 1 is pretty easy, but day 2 introduces the gimmick of snowstorms, which can be very annoying in some cases, but on this level, none of my Rotobaga got frozen, so it was beaten pretty easily. Day 4 was the same. Day 6, however, I'd placed these 4 Rotobaga in the front, but as the first big wave was being sent in, a windstorm blew past, freezing all 4 of them. So I had to place a couple other ones to break the ice. But then, as the final wave came in, 4 more of the Rotobaga got frozen. But thankfully, as 2 of them didn't get frozen, they were able to break the other Rotobaga out of the ice, and we beat day 6. Day 7 didn't really have any freezing, same with day 9, but day 11 is pretty notorious for its windstorms. But I realized that since the Rotobaga can shoot in 4 different directions, and that if you have a compact pair of them planted down, it's basically impossible for all of them to get frozen, because most of the time it's only half of them frozen, but then the other ones break them out, and it's kind of just an infinite cycle of that. And due to this group of Rotobaga in the front was basically unbeatable, and day 11 had actually been beaten pretty easily on the very first attempt. In day 12, we prepped defenses. Day 13 has 4 flags, and we have to protect these flowers from being trampled on in the very back. And the only threat this time is this Gargantuar in the very bottom lane and the imps it throws, but they were taken out pretty easily as well, beating day 13. Day 15, we have Pepper Pulse to support us against the ice. But as I mentioned earlier, that if you have a group of Rotobaga, they can just break the ice off of each other. And so I was able to beat day 15 without even the need or the help of the Pepper Pulse. Days 17, 19, and 20 were pretty easy. Day 22, we do have to be a little wary and start diversifying our placements, because this level introduces the weasel hoarders and the weasels, which are of course basically the chickens of the Frostbite Caves. But they weren't too threatening this time, so we beat them pretty easily. Day 23 has some annoying snowstorms that carry zombies right onto the endangered plants, but those are pretty easily dealt with. And the second threat is of course the weasel hoarders, but we got down so many Rotobaga that they weren't much of a challenge, making day 23 pretty simple. Day 25 is the first time we have to play this level because the Rotobaga appears in the conveyor. And normally conveyor levels that have the max level plant in them are pretty difficult because you can't really control how many you're going to get. But this time, even in the face of annoying sandstorms, we got through the level because the conveyor was being pretty generous. As day 26 started, I definitely made a mistake in planting this Rotobaga right by the weasel hoarders because I thought it might be able to take care of them, but then it plant fooded, releasing weasels, and they ended up taking the 2 lawnmowers in the bottom 2 lanes. And then 1 weasel each ended up making it past my Rotobaga in the top 2 lanes, which also made it to the lawnmowers, taking those out as well. And now the only lane we had with the lawnmower was the middle one. And it was looking pretty bad as we only had the Rotobaga in the bottom 2 lanes, and the one in the top middle lane was frozen. But as I got enough sun, I placed a Rotobaga to unfreeze the frozen one. And then as the third big wave was about to be sent in, I got enough sun for my 5th Rotobaga, making it so I could cover all the lanes. lanes. And it got a little scary in the top 2 lanes because they got frozen up there, so I quickly got enough sun and planted a Rotobaga to unfreeze them. And thankfully with this setup and all the lost lawnmowers, we're still able to beat day 26. Day 27, we have 3 Rotobaga to protect in the very back alongside 4 big waves, but this level doesn't have any snowstorms and it's basically just a bunch of tanky zombies. But the Rotobaga kind of specializes in dealing with tanky zombies as it has insane damage. So day 27 was a non-threat. Day 28 is normally the last level that we play of Frostbite Caves where we have to prep defenses, but this time it isn't the last level. So first, let's prep defenses. And after beating day 28, we hop into day 29 because even though it chooses our plants for us, Rotobaga is one of the plants. And this level ended up having no snowstorms either, and all the zombies were beaten very easily. But this still wasn't the last level, as now we have to face the boss of the Frostbite Caves. And although it is a conveyor level, the Rotobaga does end up appearing in it. And this conveyor is actually a lot less generous than the previous one, as the Rotobaga are pretty rare to get in it. But the good thing was that we didn't need too many Rotobaga, as when the plant food of the Rotobaga hit the boss, it literally took out half of his health. So after using a couple more plant food, we're pretty easily able to beat day 30 and the boss of the Frostbite Caves, and that was all the Frostbite Caves beaten using just a max level Rotobaga. Oh, and a cool little bug happened here where a zombie still existed even after beating the level. But that aside, next up is Lost City, a world which has helpful things like the gold tiles, but also hurtful things like the shovel zombies. And day 1 only consists of the helpful things, so it's pretty easy to beat. Same with day 2. Day 4, however, does introduce the pesky shovel zombie, who I thought that we would struggle with heavily, but since the Rotobaga can actually shoot backwards, and if you hit the shovel zombie from behind, it actually just ends up dying like a normal zombie, which made days 4, 6, 7, 10, and 11 all very simple to beat, as they didn't have any special challenges. Day 15, we do have to protect these key in the top and bottom lane. Normally the shovel zombies can cause a problem, but we just place our Rotobagas a little up front, so when the shovel zombies walk past them, they instantly get defeated, making day 15 very easy. Day 17, 19, and 20 were no problem either. Day 23 isn't too bad, but it does introduce a pretty annoying zombie, which is the Indiana Jones zombie, who is basically like a pirate swinging zombie from the Pirate Sea, but these guys are much tankier and do more damage, I believe. And they're mainly annoying due to the reason that I have to readjust where I place my Rotobagas. And due to my plants being so far spread out, I actually ended up losing 2 of them in the very front. But even so, the rest of them were able to defeat day 23. Day 24 has 2 flags, and we have to protect flowers in the back from being trampled on. And the shovel zombies can be semi-scary, but we just have to make sure that we have the Rotobagas planted far up front so the shovel zombies don't make it far enough to trample the flowers. And an Indiana Jones in the very bottom lane actually almost made it all the way to the flowers, but my Rotobaga were able to get him last second. And then the rest of the level wasn't a problem. Days 25, 26, 27, and 29 weren't much of a threat either. And now we're on day 30, which is the last level that we play of Lost City. And like you might have guessed, we completely annihilated the entire level, with now beating all of Lost City using just a max level Rotobaga. Next up, the far future, we're going to just be super speeding past, as it's a really easy world with no difficult challenges for the Rotobaga, and it kind of acts as a calm before the storm that we see in the dark futures and the jester zombies within it. Even the tanky zombies of the far future, like the Robocone mech and the All-Star mech, aren't difficult at all, and if a level were to pose a threat, we could just use the power tiles that are basically provided in every single level to take care of them, but that's basically never needed. And that was all of far future beaten using just a max level Rotobaga. Next up, the Dark Ages, a world where I do allow Gold Bloom, but for the first couple of levels we don't really need them, as we had Sun Gravestones to support us in Sun production. And the extent to zombies stops at Conehead, and they aren't very strong, but they come in pretty big numbers, but that's not a big problem for Rotobaga. So night 1 was cleanly swept through. Night 2, again, we had the Sun Gravestones for Sun, and the level did introduce Bucket Heads, but they die just as fast as Conehead if you have enough Rotobaga, so this level didn't pose a threat either. Night 3, the Sun Gravestones support port stops, so we do have to end up using Gold Bloom. And Gold Bloom is pretty annoying to use as its long recharge makes it so I can only have 4 Rotobaga for most of the level. And by the time we could get a second Gold Bloom, the level was basically already done. Night 5 is normally where the threat and the danger starts of Dark Ages because it introduces the Diabolical Jester. But very similarly to the Shovel Zombie, if you hit the Jester from behind, it's actually just a normal zombie and dies pretty quickly. The main problem comes in when you end up shooting them at the wrong time and they just sweep through all your Rotobaga. And thankfully it was only these 2 Jesters, and even though they took out a lot of my plants, I was able to take them out. And also my Gold Bloom recharge had replenished. But I wanted to see if these 2 Rotobagas could beat the level by themselves, but then the middle lane one got taken out and I realized that this was not happening. So I placed a couple more down and finished off the level. Night 6 was pretty easy. Night 7 has 2 flags and I placed my Rotobaga in these 2 spots to start off, and this kind of just ensures that I don't lose too many against the Jesters whenever they appear, but they actually weren't on this level and we beat it using just these 4 Rotobaga. Night 9 is definitely a level you have to be careful of since it introduces the health and speed potions, and if you aren't able to take out the gravestones on the map, the necromancy effect will happen and definitely spawn Jesters. But thankfully this plant is able to hit Jesters, so it's not too big of a deal. We just have to be careful that they don't get speed boosted and make it all the way to the lawnmower. And though this level does have annoying gravestones that spawn in frequently, it also spawns in sun gravestones, which means that even if we do end up losing a lot of our Rotobaga, we can just replant them because we have enough sun to do so. And due to this, we beat this normally annoying level pretty easily. Night 11 definitely had some annoyances as well, as a couple of the Jesters that spawned in were taking out my Rotobagas, and then there's also the gravestone in the very back that I forgot to take out and it spawned a cone head which took my lawnmower. But of course I quickly planted a Rotobaga in a position that could take the gravestone out, and now all that was left was this final wave and the full column of wizards, which aren't much of a threat to the Rotobaga, allowing us to beat Night 11. Night 12 I would say is definitely the scariest level in the Dark Ages for Rotobaga, and as you can see we have to protect these puff shroom in the very back, and the main problem is that Jesters spawn in this level. Now in all the other levels, Jester wasn't too big of a problem, as though even if the Rotobagas got taken out, we could just replace them in a different spot that could hit the Jester. But this time we have to be much more careful because if the Jester ends up catching the Rotobaga's shots, it'll just launch them at the puff shroom, taking them out instantly. And of course I knew of this, so my main strategy, as you can see on the screen, was planting a Rotobaga to take out only the necessary zombies and then shoveling it just in case a Jester was about to spawn. And within the first big wave, the first 2 Jesters came in the top 2 lanes. And to take them out, I planted a Rotobaga behind them and then I plant fooded it, which pretty easily was able to handle them. Of course, shoveling the Rotobaga right after. But right here is where I got a little careless, as I planted 2 Rotobagas and I didn't shovel them immediately. And just as I mentioned earlier, that if a Jester gets a hold of the Rotobaga shots, it's gonna launch them right at the puff shroom, which is exactly what happened, and they took me out on my first attempt. On the second attempt, I knew the basic layout of the zombies that would be coming in and when they'd be coming in, so I took out the first 2 Jesters using the same method, and then as the second horde of Jesters appeared, I made sure I didn't have any Rotobaga and then placed 1, plant fooding it, taking them all out at once. And that was actually the last of the Jesters and the zombies, and we had beaten Night 12. Night 15 was a prepare your defenses level, and we had a pretty decent amount of sun in the bank, and I carefully used it maneuvering my way through the entire level with the Jesters in mind, pretty easily beating Night 15. Night 16 only had these 2 Jesters which got taken out, and the rest of the level was a non-threat. Night 17 is a pretty interesting one because it spawns in a lot of gravestones and Jesters from the gravestones, but the cool thing is that the Jesters only appear from the gravestones, so if you place your Rotobaga in this position where they can only hit the Jesters from the behind, it makes the level very easy to deal with. And taking out these last couple of wizards, Night 17 had been beat, and now we're on the final level of the Dark Ages, Night 19. And once again, I would say that this is the second most dangerous level of the Dark Ages, as we have to protect these magnet shrooms and Jesters appear in the lanes of the magnet shroom. But there's only 2 lanes that we have to worry about, and the first is the middle lane where a Jester appears alongside 2 others, but the 2 others we kind of just let go, and the middle Jester is the one we have to take out since there's a magnet shroom in that lane. And the second lane we have to worry about is the very top one, as the Jester appears near the end, and right as I placed a Rotobaga behind it, it plant fooded and pretty easily took it out. And with that, we had beaten all of Dark Ages using just a max level Rotobaga. Next up, the Neon Mixtape Tour, a world that we're going to be super speeding through because it doesn't have many difficulties when in face of the Rotobaga. Normally, the most difficult zombies are the Microphone Whippers and the Gargantuars that have a long range attack. The Microphone Whippers are just dealt with using the Rotobaga's long range attack, and the Gargantuars themselves don't really stand a chance as the Rotobaga are usually in different lanes attacking the Gargantuar, and the Gargantuar's attack actually doesn't usually hit the Rotobaga. And the difficulty within the Neon Mixtape Tour usually just comes from the amount of zombies that are sent in, but since this plant is pretty easily able to deal with a large amount of zombies, it isn't very much of a threat. And that was all the Neon Mixtape Tour beat using just a max level Rotobaga. Next up, Jurassic Marsh wasn't too difficult either, and the early levels were extremely easy. So days 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 17, 18, and 21 all got easily eviscerated by the Rotobaga. Day 22, I prepped defenses. Days 23, 24, and 25 were all pretty easy as well. Day 26, we did have a little problem with the Ankylosaurus in the top lane combined with the T-Rex and the fossil zombie that got launched and then sped up by the T-Rex, taking out that lawnmower. But that was basically the only thing, and the rest of the level was very easily beaten. Day 27, we prepped more defenses. Day 28, we completely annihilated, and now we're on the last level of the Jurassic Marsh, day 30. And you might have noticed the only reason I really went over the Jurassic Marsh was just to show you guys the prep your defenses levels, as truthfully this world wasn't a problem at all and could have just been sped up like the Neon Mixtape Tour, but I thought the prep your defenses levels were pretty cool this time. And with that, all of Jurassic Marsh had been beat using just the max level Rotobaga. Next up, Big Wave Beach has a pretty cool mechanic with the Rotobaga, as you can place it on top of the water as the Rotobaga is a flying plant. And this makes the normally very slow paced beginning levels of Big Wave Beach actually go by pretty fast. So days 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 9, and lastly 11 were all beaten pretty easily as the Rotobaga are just overpowered in the Big Wave Beach. Day 12, we prepped some defenses. Days 17, 19, 20, and 22 were a non-threat. Day 23 is normally a difficult level because it introduces the fisherman zombies, but I wanted to stop here specifically to show y'all that the Rotobaga completely just counters the fisherman. And this is due to the reason that you can just place the Rotobaga right up front without the need of a lily pad, and their insane damage is just good against the tanky fisherman. So it's very easy to defend the banana launchers on day 23. 25, 27, and 28 followed. Day 29, we prepped defenses into a very unfortunate shape. And now we're on the last level of the Big Wave Beach, day 30, where we have to protect these crocodiles in the back, mainly from the fishermen. So my first move was covering the front column with Rotobaga so the fishermen weren't able to hook the crocodiles. Unfortunately, a deep sea guard did take out a Rotobaga in the top middle lane, but thankfully a fisherman didn't appear in the time slot that there was no plant in that lane, so I was able to get 100 sun and plant another Rotobaga. And after, things got a little chaotic in the very bottom lane as a deep sea guard launched his imp, and I had enough sun but I didn't realize it and went to buy a plant food, but by that time a Rotobaga in a different lane actually took the imp out. A pretty hectic moment, but the turnout was in our favor. And after taking out this last Octo Zombie, it meant that day 30 had been beaten, and also all of Big Wave Beach had been beaten using just a max level Rotobaga. Next up, modern day, a world which is mostly pretty easy, but there are a couple levels that pose a problem. Like day 12 for example, where we see shovel zombies to start off, and they get taken care of pretty easily once they get behind the Rotobagas, but then there's also chickens and chicken wranglers sent in the top lanes, and in the very top lane, the chickens end up taking the lawnmower. And then there's a stego in the bottom lane that launches a shovel and umbrella into the very middle lane, and the Rotobaga shoots at them, but only gets the umbrella, and then the shovel zombie ends up making it all the way to the lawnmower alongside another shovel zombie that got T-Rex speed boosted in the lane above. And the situation was looking a little dire, but thankfully this was the final wave, and all we had to worry about was this last shovel zombie and Gargantuar, which got taken out instantly after I used a plant food, and day 12 had been beaten. And the next problematic level was day 24, and it was only due to one reason, and that was my placement of the Rotobaga, because I had forgotten that the football stars would charge in and take them out way before they were able to take the all-stars out. One all-star in the top lane even ended up tanking a lot of the Rotobaga shots and made it all the way to the lawnmower. But things got even worse as the only two Rotobaga I had on the map got instantly taken out by the all-stars. And now we only had the one in the very top lane to work with. And the all-stars are actually pretty easy to deal with as they're slowed down, but the only problem would be the newspaper zombie, and I was able to get down a second Rotobaga just in case it did anything, and it didn't, so we beat day 24. Day 30 can also be problematic because there's flowers that we have to protect from being trampled on, and there's also speedy zombies like the newspapers and the all-stars. And for the all-stars, we have to use plant food as the Rotobagas just don't deal enough damage, and one actually almost trampled the flowers, but thankfully was beaten last second. And that was kind of the extent of the level, me just plant fooding Rotobagas whenever I felt the need, and pretty easily day 30 was beaten. Now we're on day 31, the last level of modern day and the last level that we play in the entire challenge. And compared to the previous modern day levels, day 31 isn't much of a challenge, so it's pretty easily beaten. But that also means that the max level Rotobaga had now beaten the entirety of PvZ2, losing to literally 0 levels. So I hope y'all enjoyed the video and let me know what other plans I should try next. Okay, bye bye.